why not talk about some exciting new frontiers in data science? In particular, I'd love to start with reinforcement learning, one of two areas that I personally am most excited about in data science. Reinforcement learning is one type of machine learning, and we are going to build some intuition for how to think about reinforcement learning. If you've seen my previous videos, you know I am slightly taken with these mesmerizing dancing robots from Boston Dynamics. I also want to flag that reinforcement learning is not just for robots. In fact, many creatures exhibit reinforcement learning. So here is a bird learning to clean up after itself, and it has done so by learning that it's going to get some reward. Presumably, I'm no bird trainer, but presumably it anticipates some reward for stacking all the little things on the thing, technical terms. If you are on the internet, and particularly social media, I will be shocked if you have not heard of Bunny, the talking dog. Bunny has buttons that Bunny presses in order to communicate with her owner. So these buttons say things like food, outside, love, rain, mom, dad, sleep. Bunny has learned to press these buttons over time through, I assume, reinforcement learning. Cooking is reinforcement learning. Here I am making cooked quinoa. This is not me. I don't cook. But this is the idea of reinforcement learning is I follow a recipe and I get reinforcements as to whether or not it's going well. Is it burning? Is it raw? Does it taste good? I get feedback. I get reinforcements on how I did, and I adjust as I go. And if you're anything like me, of course, instead of cooking, you order from Hunan Bistro. This message is brought to you by Hunan Bistro. Little teeny tiny backdrop of what we mean by reinforcement learning. So this is learning to make decisions over time to achieve a goal. Shout out to another colleague, Professor Angela Radulescu, who was a co-instructor with me when I taught natural language processing at NYU, and she taught a course in reinforcement learning. We taught it together. This material is leans heavily on her. Reinforcement learning is a mathematical framework for defining what it means to behave optimally. It's about maximizing cumulative reward and minimizing loss in a changing stochastic, i.e., random world. My goodness, what does that mean? That means we are trying to do the best we can in a changing world. That's kind of what we're all doing. It's based on reinforcements, as the name would suggest. So signals about how you're performing come in, and you use those signals to change your behavior. Feedback in reinforcement learning is evaluative. This is good. This is bad. We don't know the optimal outcomes. We can just say, hey, I'm here. I did this. Oh, I got information that this maybe was good. I did that. I got information that maybe that was bad. And I live my life that way. My career coach, Megan Hellerer, has a book coming out at the time of recording. Maybe it's out by the time you're watching this, called Directional Living. And it's all about how to find your authentic path in life by working through evaluative feedback rather than corrective in your own life. I'll let her explain it. It's great. But all of this applies beautifully to our everyday lives. Our goal is to take actions to earn higher rewards. Reinforcement learning, in addition to being this kind of overall mathematical framework to think about what optimal behavior is also separately a candidate theory for intelligent behavior. It's what we think might be going on when birds learn to stack hoops and I learn to make quinoa. So we think humans, animals, computers, or even robots rely on reinforcement learning. There are many candidate theories out there besides reinforcement learning. I will not pretend to say this is the only one. One thing to note within reinforcement learning is it's not necessarily the case that every move gets us feedback. It could be that we get feedback every couple of years. Oh, I actually don't like this job, but it took a while to figure that out. Or it could be delayed. I do this thing, but my partner isn't mad at me until later on. Or it could be uncertain. Are they mad at me? I don't know. You can think of reinforcement learning as at the intersection of all kinds of fields. And I love an interdisciplinary what have you. So this is obviously very exciting. So it's at the intersection of neuroscience, psychology, econ, math, engineering, robotics, It's awesome. It's everywhere. It's subtle. It's powerful. Reinforcement learning. All right. It's new. It's I think on the cutting edge of data science. I think it is a frontier that's very, very exciting in data science. I've chosen to focus on it in the frontiers unit of this course because I think it's so exciting, but it's also not that new. If you have taken a psych course in life or read about psychology, you've probably come across the idea of Pavlov's dogs. This was a study that Pavlov conducted in 1897, where he realized that he could condition dogs to have a particular response. So you put some meat in front of a dog and they will drool. Then you put some meat and ring a bell in front of a dog and it will drool. And eventually you could just ring the bell in front of the dog and it would drool. In 1898, the next year, Thorndike comes out with his cats and the law of effect. Now, shout out to Thorndike, because everyone seems to know about Pavlov's dogs. Very few people know about Thorndike's cats. The idea with cats, little shout out to the cat people watching this video, is they were put in these boxes, and to get out of these boxes, the cats had to follow a certain set of steps. So push a lever, pull a string, knock the door down, and then you can escape. And they would learn how to do it. And lo and behold, if you put a cat in this box and it would take a while to get out the first time, you put it back in and it would get faster as we go. So cats are demonstrating what we think may be pretty reasonably described as reinforcement learning. Jump to 1948. Alan Turing talked about the idea of trial and error learning in machines. Alan Turing is considered one of the most influential thinkers, I think, of any recent time. He's behind much of computer science as we know it. He, in fact, wrote in 1948, and it's worth looking up his old writings. He's really fun to read. He says, when a configuration, this is describing a computer, when a configuration is reached for which the action is undetermined, a random choice for the missing data is made, and the appropriate entry is made in the description, tentatively, and it is applied. When a pain stimulus occurs, all tentative entries are canceled, and when a pleasure stimulus occurs, they are made permanent. This is him describing how a computer might learn. Amazing. Jump to now, recently, reinforcement learning has been the backbone of a lot of really interesting developments in using computers to do things that are terrifyingly impressive, including play what we thought, or we still think of as very difficult games. So let's get some intuition. That's a very high overview of reinforcement learning. Let's zoom into a specific example of how to think about reinforcement learning to build that magical intuition I'm always talking about. So the multi-armed bandit problem, or the K-armed bandit problem, is one of the first problems you would learn about if you were taking a course involving reinforcement learning. Suppose, hypothetically, you wanted to order Chinese food. How would you decide which restaurant to order from? There are two possible broad options. One is exploitation. Stick with the restaurant that you know. If only I knew of a Chinese restaurant. Exploration. Try something new. Go to a restaurant that is not Hunan Bistro. The key thing here is our two moves are explore or exploit. And that is a central tension in reinforcement learning. Keep doing what I've been doing or try something else. Again, this maps beautifully to our own lives and our own journeys. So we can even be more specific within this framework. We can say, explore how? We could explore randomly, or maybe we could explore according to top Yelp reviews. Maybe I could explore according to what Professor Jones-Rooy suggests I might try, whatever. Or you could do something a little bit more complicated where you set some satisfaction threshold for exploit below which you explore. I will keep going to Hunan Bistro, but maybe if I order from them a few times and it's like decreasing in quality below some threshold, I'll start exploring. So we can make more complicated behaviors simply from building from explore versus exploit. All right, to see all of this, let us go to the fabulous Las Vegas and see exactly how this might play out. The word bandit in this problem is, in fact, a Vegas term. A one-armed bandit is a slot machine with one arm. So the next time you're in Vegas, you one-armed bandit you. A K-armed bandit problem is one where you have more than one lever you could possibly pull. And it is a classic example of this explore-exploit trade-off in gambling as in life. When you have more than one option, when do you stick with what you know, pull the lever that's been treating you right, and when do you try something new? Trying something new means taking a risk because potentially you'll get a lower payoff, but you could find better options. So a two-armed bandit is when you're choosing between two possible levers. A three-armed bandit is three options, and so on to K. So suppose we have 8 arms and we have 8 slot machines. Here's the octopus trying to decide which slot machine to focus on. So the way to think about the K-armed bandit is that each action has an underlying reward distribution. There's some expected value and distribution around it for each of the levers that I might pull. In the case of the problem, let's assume we're the house, we're the casino. We know the reward probabilities, but they are unknown to the gambler. This dumb octopus has no idea what the reward distributions are, but we know because I've programmed. Each slot machine has an underlying reward distribution. There are 9 here and 8 machines. Don't get too hung up on it. The first slot machine 0, has an average payoff of 2 with some variation around it, maybe a high payoff of 6 every now and again, and sometimes -2. The next slot machine has an average payoff of 0, but you could, go around that distribution and so on. So they have an average and they have a distribution. The gambler's objective, of course, is to maximize the total expected rewards over n time steps. So if I say, hey, octopus, you can pull a lever 100 times, and it's up to you if you want to do 100 on just the first lever, if you want to spread it out randomly. You need to figure out what strategy to use to maximize your rewards, which again is what we're doing when we're gambling. So what's the optimal strategy for the gambler? That's the puzzle. I'm so glad you asked. Well, I encourage you to pause the video here, well, in a moment, and think about what you might do or what you might suggest the octopus do. So suppose you are the gambling octopus, which is a sentence we've all said thousands of times. You have 100 trials to earn as much money as possible. Each of 8 levers, pretend there's only 8, has some mean and distribution of payoffs. What are 3 possible strategies you could use to maximize your income? You don't know anything about the underlying payoffs at the moment. You just know you have 100 trials and you need to do something over those 100 to figure out to make the most. What strategy are you going to employ? Of those 3, which one do you think is optimal and why? So pause, give it some thought. And if you don't, that's fine. I don't think I would, but that's the idea. When I talk about this with my students, we all discuss different ideas and I name the strategies after them, and it's all really fun. But generally, our strategies might boil down to something like this. One is no exploration. Pick the lever and just keep pulling it, okay? 2 might be random exploration. I have 100 trials. I'm just literally going to roll an 8-sided dice. Or I might do something that's smart exploration, which is what most students end up suggesting is some variant on this, where I maybe try randomly for a while, and then if I have a sense of which one is giving me a higher payoff, maybe I'll zoom in on that one. We can be more precise than that. We could do purely random selection, choose each lever with equal probability. Another common strategy that's programmed into simulations of this particular problem, you can check our free online textbook for how to implement this in code in Python, and you can program these. But another strategy in reinforcement learning is called epsilon greedy. So this is where you run an experiment for some initial number of times. So if I have 100 trials, maybe the first 12, I just kind of pull at random. Then I will choose the winning variant with the highest initial score in that initial round and say, okay, lever number 2 seems to be paying off the most. Then I'm going to set an epsilon value. So some small value, usually, let's say 10%. From then on, I'm going to run my experiment with the winning variant for 1 minus epsilon percentage of the time. So for example, I'm going to then continue with that winning variant, lever number 2, 90% of the time. And 10% of the time, because I've set E equals to 10, I'm going to randomly explore other options. Now, it's up to me what to set that epsilon to. I could set it to 30%. So 70% of the time I pull the high lever and 30% of the time I explore. And you can imagine how this gets difficult to calculate or anticipate. And so we can run some simulations in our program to see what would the right breakdown be given the parameters of the problem. Another possible strategy is known as upper confidence bound, or UCB, not to be confused with the Upright Citizens Brigade Theater, which is what I always think of. When exploring options, take into account not just the mean, we've only focused on the mean so far, take into account the uncertainty. Those distributions, some might have a mean of 4, but there's a possible really high upper bound, or another might have a mean of 4, and all of the values are right around that 4. The idea with upper confidence bound is we choose the variant with the highest upper bound, not necessarily the one with the highest mean. So which of these strategies should we try? Which one do we think is more or less likely to work? Are there other strategies out there that we think might work better? Well, that is something that we can absolutely simulate in Python or wherever we want. Check out the code in the book to see how to do it yourself and get a feel for it. If this was interesting to you, I absolutely recommend further research in reinforcement learning. This is not a reinforcement learning course. Just wanted to give you a taste for it. So that's it. Thank you so much for being here and joining me in Las Vegas, and we will see you in the next video.